So, welcome back to yet another exciting episode of Get to Know the Real Estate Ecosystem, the show where we don't just talk about buildings, we talk about the people who bring them to life. I am Anisha Bhatnagar, your host of this episode. Well, if you are new to our channel, and I suggest you catch all our exciting conversations with our guest speakers in every episode on Real-Estate.Channel, your go-to podcast for unfiltered stories from the people shaping the real estate market. Today's guest is Steve Dicke, the Vice President of Property Management at Newmark. He oversees over 4 million square feet in New Jersey, but what's more impressive is the wisdom and heart behind his 17 years in the industry. He started his journey from walking into a shattered property early in his career and being told to figure it out how to fix the broken pieces and sell it, to now streamlining the operations through AI and solar innovation. He has come a long way. He was also told that successful property managers masters both. They not only have to read the spreadsheets, but they also have to read the room. Successful property managers know that while number keeps the business running, it takes empathy to keep the business growing. Steve has seen the evolution of property management from inside out, and it shows. This one is going to be a super interesting episode. We are diving into resilience, growth, and leadership in the world of commercial real estate. Whether it's cutting cost, improving energy efficiency, repositioning assets, or leading large teams, Steve has done it, and he has done it beautifully well. He has held key roles at CBRE, Vision Real Estate Partners, the WIC companies, and now at Newmark. So basically, he brings a broad lens to how CRE operations really work, from solar energy projects to boosting NOI and managing transitions across 45 plus properties. Yes, he has been in the trenches. In this episode, we'll get into how he has led, what's worked, and what anyone in this space can take away. So, whether you are managing properties, leading assets, or just curious about scaling in the commercial real estate business, this episode is for you. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. Steve, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Anisha. Great to be here.
So, Steve, what inspired you to enter the world of commercial property management, and was this always the plan?
So, great question. So, growing up, I was always into math and always into solving problems and kind of putting the numbers together. I was a numbers guy. So, growing up in the 90s in New York City, being a Mets fan, it was always easy to look at my favorite team and try to figure out what was broken and try to figure out how to put the pieces back together. But my real inspiration came from my family. So, my brother goes to university in Center City, Philadelphia, and the school he was living at only guaranteed him housing for a year. And so my parents started looking at apartments, and they hated all of them. They must have shown up, the night after a big party. Their feet were sticking to the floor. The places smelled like stale beer. They were like, this isn't for us. And so, excuse me. And so my parents decide, hey, we're going to go buy a bank foreclosure before like HGTV and flip this house was cool. And so we put in a lot of sweat equity into the place. My father was a second generation shop teacher. I always joked that growing up, there was always 3 unfinished projects in our house at all times. And so we fixed the place up. My brother lives there for 4 years. They decided to rent it out for shortly thereafter. And then my father got tired of running back and forth between New York City and Philadelphia and sold it for 4.5 times what they paid for it. And to me, it wasn't so much about the money, whereas it really was about the vision to see that something that nobody else saw value in, that they came in, saw value, made some money off of it, and then obviously was able to sell it for, quite a windfall. That was my inspiration. Following that, I went out, I got my business degree, and I followed around an alumni from my university who was working at CBRE. And so he was a broker, and so I got to introduced to the world of brokerage and marketing and finance. And he looked at me and said, what do you think about brokerage? And I said, really want to do property management and asset management. Made a connection there, came in as an entry-level role and kind of hit the ground running.
So I love how it wasn't just the end result, the profit that stayed with you, but the process of creating value from something that was overlooked. So now fast forward to today, you have come a long way from that first hands-on experience. You have been with Newmark for over a decade, which is incredible. Can you please walk us through your journey, how you moved from being a senior property manager to now leading as a vice president? What did that growth look like from the inside?
Yeah, well, a lot of people say, I got lucky in a sense, but I really say that luck is really preparation meeting opportunity. And it started really even before I was a senior property manager. It started when I was, a property admin. I went out and I said to my boss, how do I better myself? So I went and got my real estate license. Then I went out and got two professional designations after that, an RPA and an FMA. Fast forward to when I'm a senior property manager, it's 2020, it's COVID, we're on lockdown. And I'm bored. I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. And I went to my boss and said, hey, look, I've got my property license. I've got these two designations. I'm going to go get my brokerage license. And by no means do I want your job. I'm just bored. I want to feel like I accomplished something, right? And so little did I know, less than 18 months later, he'd walk out the door, and me having that brokerage license allowed me to slide, in addition to having my experience, allowed me to slide into that role and really gave me the opportunity to become a vice president at Newmark, which has been a great opportunity.
So, speaking of leadership and scale, Newmark operates across such a diverse range of property types. I noticed it on your website that you deal in data centers, industrial, multi-family, retail, office. Like, it's a very broad portfolio. Are you involved in overseeing all of these properties, or is it a particular asset class that you specialize in?
So, great question. We're a third party property management shop. And basically, what that means is we don't own any of the real estate that we take care of. We're a fiduciary. We help in my department, we help manage it, but we also help appraise it and sell it and lease it and project manage it, right? So, we do a little bit of everything. We really follow our clients where they need us to go. And that job is really on me to go network, if we don't have the individuals on our team, to go out and network with the people who do, to bring in that expertise, to bring that experience. Primarily, we're doing mostly office, but we'll follow our clients, where they need us to be.
So it's basically about prioritizing based on what comes in first. Like if it is a multi-family project coming in, you handle that, and if it's a retail or a office next, you shift your focus accordingly. Is that right?
Correct. And we bring in the people who, have the expertise in those, who have experience in retail or office or industrial properties or multifamily. Newmark just got involved in the multifamily space a little over a year and a half ago. And
Mm-hmm.
we're, we brought in the right people to help lead that team and get that off the ground. It's been really successful and really eye-opening, really interesting.
So what qualities do you look for when building or mentoring a property management team?
So great question. I mean, skills are important, but I feel like attitude is more important. We're in a customer service first business, and it's serving not only our clients, but also our tenants as well. And so they need to be empathetic. They need to be able to listen, but having some of those other skills on the operational side or the financial side and knowing the numbers is also important. But to me, attitude is always the most important. We're a small, tight knit group, and bringing in the right people with the right attitude and the right demeanor makes all the difference in the world.
So, well, speaking of perspective, 17 years, it is a very long journey in this space. What would you say have been your biggest lessons, not just as a professional, but also as a personal, on a personal level?
Yeah, so it's definitely a people first business, right? I mentioned it before. It's all about attitude.
Yes.
And and having the right people, whether it's your team, your clients, your partners, is essential. One thing I learned personally early on in my career is I'm a type A, right? Hey, let's go forward, let's do it, I'll stay organized, or hey, I'll just do it myself. And I realized a really important lesson to prevent yourself from getting overwhelmed is, you can really do anything in this business, but you can't do everything. So having the right people on your team who have skills and complement your skills that you can delegate things to and that you can trust that they're going to get done, it's wildly important. I mean, without our team here at Newmark, I would be drowning. We've got a great team in place and a lot of different skill sets and a lot of different backgrounds, and it helps us really go.
It is such a grounded approach, Steve. It is important to learn and know when to lean in and when to step back and empower others. That mindset is what creates strong, lasting teams. I'm curious, was there ever a project you thought might not work out, but it ended up surprising you in a good way?
Yeah, so that's tough to answer. I mean, right? It comes back to a numbers business, right? Real estate is all about the numbers, right? And generating
Right.
revenues and thus making them fall to the bottom line via profit. So whether you can raise your revenue or shrink your expenses, there have been plenty of times that I was like, man, this is never going to work. And they have the vision, just like my parents did years ago, to, put a spin on it and maybe do something that I wasn't seeing, that at the end of the day, it made it work and made it a viable project.
How do you define success now compared to when you first started in the industry?
Yeah, so when I first started in the industry, I thought to myself, man, why did I get a college degree for this? I'm sitting here pushing paper across my desk. I really didn't understand it. But what I didn't realize was they were building the foundation to really understand the business, right? And it's using the contractors, using really understanding the expenses and how they kind of fall into certain buckets and growing the revenue, right? And it wasn't until I was in the business for a couple of years that I kind of had that aha moment of, hey, they were really building the foundation of the budgets and the numbers are really what this business is about at the end of the day.
What does a typical day in your life look like? I am sure no 2 days are exactly the same, but please walk us through your usual rhythm.
Yeah, so the one thing I love about this business is no 2 days are the same. Just like when you think you've seen everything, something crazy happens that you would never have thought would have happened. I always say, hey, I draw a to-do list of 10 things long, and I'm lucky to get to 2 or 3 of them because the phone is going to ring or my email is going to go off or something is going to happen that throws you off course. And you just have to be able to be flexible and be able to pivot and to be able to move in that direction. Conversely, there's days where I'm sitting behind my desk for 8 hours, plugging away on budgets or spreadsheets or something else. But the cool thing about it is no 2 days are the same, and I'm certainly not behind my desk 5 days a week. I'm always running to go help a manager or go help solve a problem or go meet a new client.
So it sounds like you actually enjoy the unpredictability and challenges that come with this field.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about problem solving and being able to provide a service for your tenants and your clients and, drive a return for your clients.
That's great, Steve. And how do you prioritize what needs your attention the most?
So early on in my career, one of my colleagues said, hey, client always needs to come first. And so we always try to prioritize putting our client's need first. They said client first, company second, and yourself third. So it's really about putting the client first and putting their needs. At the end of the day, we're fiduciary to our clients, and we try to treat their properties as if they were our own and
Mhm.
really try to, focus on their needs, as to whatever's going on at the asset from a day-to-day level.
It really shows how client-centered your work has to be. But that must come with its fair share of unique challenges, right? Can you share an example or a complex property issue you have tackled and how it played out?
Yeah, great question. So really where the aha moment for me was a couple of years ago. I had a really interesting, unique job where I was in between operations and acquisitions. So they'd get under contract to buy a property. I'd help coordinate the due diligence, which is like your typical home inspection for most people when they're thinking about buying a home. So I'd line up the engineers and do that. And so I went to go look at this property and I came back all emotional. I said to my boss, well, this is wrong and that's wrong and this is wrong. And he's like, stop. He goes, go tell me what the problems are and then we'll fix it. And I basically need a number. So I said, okay, well, I think the air conditioning is a big problem. And so they had $50,000 to finish the air conditioning. The project was 95% built. The seller didn't want to finish building it. So I brought out our engineering team, trusted engineering team, and an HVAC contractor. Well, it wasn't a $50,000 problem. It was a $250,000 problem. And so my boss takes that. He goes back to the seller and says, we can't buy this property as is. We need a $250,000 credit. Well, the seller said no. And so the property sat out for another 3 to 6 months. And then the seller came back to us and said, hey, are you still interested in buying this property? And they said, absolutely. But now we don't want $250,000 off the price. We want $500,000 off the price. Well, it was validation for me because not only did I uncover that issue from both an operation and a financial perspective, but I helped my client buy the building much cheaper. The seller agreed to the $500,000 credit and they ended up purchasing the building. And it was a win for our team and for our client and for our owner. It was really cool.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool, right? So, Steve, if I may ask, are these HVAC teams third-party vendors or are they part of your in-house team?
So we have a relationship with a lot of vendors. In this case, it was an outsourced vendor. We have some great people on our team, and where they can use their knowledge and skills, we do that. But we often rely on a lot of outsourced vendors, engineers, HVAC, parking lot experts, roofing experts to really handle some of these capital and more expensive items.
That's awesome. And honestly, from everything you have just shared, it really sounds like getting the pricing right comes down to the relationships you have built over a period of time. Like it's not about just the numbers, it's about the trust, knowing who to call and having those solid connections that actually make, things work.
Absolutely. I always say that this business is a triangle, right? You've got clients, you've got tenants, and you've got vendors, and all three of them have separate, totally different interests, but they're all kind of pulling on each other. We're kind of in the middle of it. We've got to try to balance the relationship between the three of them. We have to maintain relationships with all three, but at the end of the day, the client's what's really most important to us. But having those connections with the tenants and with the vendors is absolutely priceless to bring them in when there is a problem that you can rely on them and trust them and trust what they're saying and trust their expertise.
It really sounds like you are playing both a strategic and a diplomatic role, keeping everyone aligned while still making sure the owner's interests are protected. That must take a lot of clarity and communication day in and day out. I am sure of that. And my next question would be on days when it gets particularly intense, how do you handle stress at work?
Yeah, so this is a business where you need a little bit of thick skin and you can't take things personally. We've gotten plenty of phone calls from frustrated clients, from frustrated tenants, where there's an issue. I can remember an example where it was during a pretty heavy rainstorm. A client calls me because part of the roof was literally starting to blow off a building, and he was freaking out. And I said, "Look, I mean, we've got our roofer out there. We're ready to go, but we can't send people up there in the middle of a rainstorm. It's unsafe. It's dangerous. We're protecting the tenant's interests. We're making sure that the leaks are diverted away from their equipment. And as soon as it stops raining, and as soon as it's safe and it's not super windy up there, we'll get our roofer up there and we'll get it repaired as soon as possible." So having that calmness of kind of seeing through the storm and lining up steps so that you can resolve a problem, but certainly having thick skin and remaining calm and thinking through the issues and how to resolve them, it's paramount in this business for sure.
Absolutely. Staying calm and solution focused in uncertain situation is easier said than done. But hearing how you handled that moment, it's very clear that your 17 years of experience really shines through in situation like these. And speaking about the moments that has left you with a mark, can you share a story from your life or career journey that really stuck with you?
Yeah, so I'll come back to that, that acquisition story that I was telling before where I came back and I was super emotional, right? At the end of
Yeah.
the day on the commercial side, yes, while it is a people business, from a, broken fence or broken roof or broken boiler or whatever the issue is, it all has to be boiled down to a number because at the end of the day, real estate's just another financial investment that you can see, feel, and touch. You've got some control over it, and you're really just trying to drive returns to the investors. So, staying calm, boiling things down into a number so that you can kind of work with it because at the end of the day, you're running like a mini company for your clients.
What advice do you give to your younger team members when they are feeling overwhelmed? Also, what's mistake you made earlier in your career that taught you something no amount of training could?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I try to instill in young people is accountability, right? And to me, the biggest part of accountability is not getting overwhelmed. We end up with a lot of type A people in this business who want to take accountability and just basically do things themselves. And it's easy to get overwhelmed when you keep saying yes to things. And so you have to know how much you can handle in a certain amount of time. And a lot of that is sometimes coming back to your clients or, your vendors or your managers and saying, "Hey, how soon do you need this? Or how important is this?" So you can try to prioritize your work list kind of on your own that way.
Reminder, Steve. I think a lot of people, especially early in their careers, confuse saying yes with proving themselves. But it's really about
Absolutely.
setting the Yeah, but it's really about setting the right expectations when you learn that lessons early on. Did you pick it up from a mistake you made by yourself or from watching others go through it?
Yeah, look, I did it myself where I just, became overwhelmed and said, I can't do this all myself and I need to push back and set expectations and to your point, being accountable for just not saying yes to everything and try to delegate where I could. So certainly it's easy to get overwhelmed because you just want to say yes to your point to, continue to climb the ladder and show off and improve yourself or prove yourself that, you need to be accountable for deadlines and for your workload. And so saying no and trying to prioritize through your clients or through your managers or whoever's asking for the work is certainly important and something to keep in mind at all times.
Yes. So, Steve, what's your approach to building trust and long-term partnerships?
Yeah, so again, we've got to earn that trust every single day. I heard somebody say the other day it's like taking out the trash and you have to take out the trash every single day, every single week, every
True.
single month for your client, right? It's earning that trust day after day after day. And it's doing the things that you say that you're going to do. So it's you earn trust by your actions, not through your words. And so we're just myself and my team, we just try to be incredibly consistent and do exactly the things that we promise that we're going to do.
That makes a lot of sense. So, for our audience, Steve, I would like to ask you a question related to NOI. What exactly is NOI in real estate? And as a property manager, how can someone work on improving it? Maybe you could share an example or a real life situation.
Sure. So NOI stands for net operating income. And what net operating income is your revenue minus your expenses. Sounds simple, but as a property manager or an owner or investor, you're trying to drive your NOI because typically real estate trades for a multiple on top of your NOI. And so and that's what makes real estate different than like stocks or bonds. You've got a lot more control over it. So for example, one example I can give you is I'm a multifamily and single family investor. So one thing that, I was able to do is, come in and find a property that was either, poorly managed or underutilized, find a way to make it more valuable, more rentable square footage, whether it's you're, building out an attic or adding, a bathroom or a laundry room to a basement, right? So why is someone going to pay you more rent for it? All right, so that's one example to drive NOI. Another is, hey, let me reduce my expenses or create another stream of income, whether it's solar, electric, that you can sell back to your tenants. Or we recently just did a massive HVAC, which is an air conditioning project, where we were able to replace antiquated air conditioning equipment at 80% off of the purchase price or the value through incentives through the utility company. At the end of the day, it's a numbers business. So if you can either increase revenue, decrease expenses, or both to drive the profits to the building, that's what makes it more valuable. That's how we are able to come in and add value, whether it's bidding services or thinking of some other revenue stream that the client may not have thought of, or maybe they have, and we're just executing their plan. So it's really about driving the NOI and driving the numbers.
So, is there anything that we should be cautious about when we talk about NOI?
Yeah, so it's really about knowing your numbers and knowing your numbers well, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of times, people will say all the time, like, if you're cheating your underwriting, at the end of the day, you're only cheating yourself. I call it like eraser underwriting, right? If you're not
Mm-hmm.
honest with the numbers, they're not going to be honest with you on the backside. So it's really understanding and knowing the numbers, what things are going to cost to do, right? Whether it's a capital project, whether it's roof, whether it's solar, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's parking lot. It's really knowing those numbers that are really going to help A, offset the operating expenses, but also B, drive the revenues from a lease up or from getting space leased that you couldn't.
Now, please tell us, how do you balance the operational side with the leadership side of your role?
Yeah, so I certainly think that's the biggest challenge, right? You can't manage over 4 million square feet yourself. So it's really having the right team in place with a balance of the right skills. The thing I absolutely love about our team is there's no egos. Everybody's got a great attitude. Everybody can bounce ideas off each other. There's no stupid questions in our office, but it's really about hiring the right people and putting them in place and roles to be successful, not only for their career, but also for our clients and for our portfolio as well.
Exactly, you can't be everywhere at once, and having the right team makes all the difference. So, now moving on to the next topic, Steve. Tell us about the 800 kilowatt solar project you helped finance at no cost to your clients. That is very rare, and how did you pull that off?
Yeah, so the great question. So a number of years ago during a previous administration, they were giving 30% federal grants for solar installations, and the local utility PSE&G was giving us 70% on a loan. So there was no cost to the client, and the loan was paid back with SRECs, which are solar renewable energy credits. So the utility was paid back with the SRECs, the federal government paid for a part of it, and it created a new income and revenue stream for our client because they were able to sell the electricity, albeit at a discount to what the tenant was normally paying to the tenant. So it was a win for all sides. It made the building more valuable. Today, there's still great incentives, maybe not so much on solar, but for example, we're in the process today actually of replacing significant amount of HVAC equipment at 80% off thanks to the rebates through the utility company today. And so we constantly look for the incentives. We have an in-house energy team who helps us spearhead some of these projects and really understands the incentives. So we've got probably 24 projects in the pipeline right now for HVAC. And the next thing we're going to look into potentially is large battery storage for energy to also help offset the electrical costs as well.
Interesting, Steve. So, if I'm understanding correctly, even as a tenant looking to rent a property, it's important to ask questions about things like the age and the condition of the air conditioner units, their remaining lifespan, and whether there are any upcoming upgrades planned.
Yes, absolutely. In this day and age, right, COVID is still kind of wreaking havoc on our business in unique ways because former landlords maybe or current landlords have maybe overpaid for their buildings or have too much debt on their buildings. So as they, as a tenant decides to sign a lease, and most office leases are at a minimum 5 years if they're new tenants, some are 7, 10, some are even 20 years. So it's important. They say the three most important things about real estate are location, location, location. And now location is still certainly really important, but they're also trying to understand their client or who their landlord is going to be, and also the expensive things on the building. So it's important to know what are the age of the expensive things for capital items such as roof and air conditioning equipment and heating equipment. Because if we hit another dip in the recession, if we dip into a recession or the owner falls on hard times, they may not have the money to do those things. So it's important for the tenant to not only understand the location and the building, but also understand how their future landlord is capitalized as well.
So, was there
Yes.
ever a time when you had a tenant who made things really challenging, maybe created a situation where it was tough to even get the deal across the finish line?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tenants are our paying customers. So, right, we have to acknowledge them and understand and deal with their concerns. Sometimes we try to steer them in a different direction, try to change their mindset of how they looked at things of, hey, maybe consider doing it this way, or hey, let's consider doing it that way. Certainly things like the HVAC incentive to try to, get a deal across the finish line if they were complaining about there was potentially an HVAC issue. We try to structure in a way that everybody's happy, our tenants, our clients, because at the end of the day, it's about the clients, but the tenants are paying customers and we want them to be there. And we try to do everything we can to get them in the building and keep them in the building and keep them happy.
It's really about balancing the tenant's needs with the owner's priority and showing that you have done the homework before making a recommendation. Speaking of finding smarter solutions, how do you see technology shaping the future of commercial property management, especially when it comes to things like energy optimization or keeping tenants more engaged?
Yeah, well, technology is certainly evolving everywhere, and it's no different on commercial real estate, right? Certainly ChatGPT, Newmark even has their own one, Newmark GPT. Certainly from an administrative standpoint, it helps us be a lot more efficient, helps us, potentially solve problems, or again, mindset, think about different solutions that we may not have thought of as well. But in addition, the technology on the air conditioning and the energy savings, BMS systems and control systems, and even the battery storage to either, charge the batteries when energy is cheap and discharge them when it's expensive to purchase power. The technology is ever evolving, and it's important that, us as property managers and as a company stay on top of it to help guide our clients as well.
So, if I may ask, is this Newmark GPT, is this used by everyone in the company, or it's specifically to use by the property management team?
It's predominantly property management, but it is available to everybody in the company.
And is there any other AI tool that you are using right now?
No, not at this time. But again, coming back to the building sensors and the BMS system, it's important that we stay on top of technology to be as cutting edge as we can because it's evolving ever so quickly here.
Awesome. So you have worked at both CBRE and Newmark. What lessons have you learned from both of them?
Great question. So I started my career at CB, and they were kind of really rigid, which honestly was a good thing for me at the time because they have their certain way of doing things. We call it like the CB way of doing things. And so it gave me the structure and the consistency that I needed out of the gate. Both, and they're similar to Newmark in the sense that we both have a fantastic platform, but it's nice because, wherever we are, I can pick up the phone, and if a client needs something in Cleveland or LA or Michigan or Texas, we have resources across the country and across the world that will allow us to, lean on our platform wherever they are and whatever the needs are that they have.
So, Steve, did you have a mentor when you were just starting out in your career?
Absolutely. Certainly, it's important to have somebody to learn and to grow from. And it's important to have somebody that's honest and trustworthy. And that's, my best mentors have been that, they've given both not only sound business, but also sound personal advice as well. And building that relationship on a personal level to give them advice for their career or whatever it is in life that's throwing at them is really important.
Steve, I really like this point that it's not just about what you learn on the job, but it is also about the relationships you build along the way. And speaking of your journey, you have worked across quite a range of asset classes like office, retail, industrial, and even self storage. Out of all these, is there one that you find the most exciting to work with, or maybe the most challenging to manage?
So again, I'll come back to it. The cool thing that keeps you on your toes is no 2 days are the same. I talked about how Newmark's getting into the multifamily, and it's certainly been the most eye-opening in comparison to some of the other assets that we've dealt with. The big difference between commercial and residential is In residential, it's somebody's home. So it's a lot more emotional driven. If there's a leak, oh my goodness, there's a leak in my living room, right? Whereas if it's in an office building, if you've taken the time to build the right relationships with your tenants, they don't call you screaming, ready to tear your head off as you know, as they may in residential. In office, it's, hey, there's a leak in my office. Can you get around to fixing it? And I think, the communication and building that relationship up front is, the big difference between residential and commercial. Commercial, you tend to have a lot fewer tenants, whereas residential, you may be managing a building with 5, 6, 7, 800 tenants. It's hard to build that personal relationship with all of them, but the biggest difference is just how emotional people get. And if you spend the time ahead on the front end building that relationship, you tend to get a little bit more leeway and a little bit more patience and a lot less emotion from the commercial tenants.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. All right, Steve, let's switch gears and jump into the fun segment. Here's how this works. I'll give you some real life inspired scenarios, and it's all about rapid decision making. You have to tell us what would you do in each of these situations. So are you ready for the fun segment? Can we
Sure,
start?
let's go.
Okay. So the first one is the angry lobby plant. You have got a tenant who has filed 5 complaints in the last 2 weeks, not about the HVAC or the elevators, but about the lobby plant looking sad and dry. The building engineer insists it's just in its seasonal phase. Steve, how will you handle this situation?
So great question. I mean, I think the first thing I would say is that probably wouldn't have gone to the first complaint. Probably after the second one, I probably would have gone and had a meeting with the tenant, had a meeting with the building engineer, and tried to understand, get some FaceTime with them as to exactly what's going on.
Got it. Your second scenario is you walked into a building where everything has gone wrong. Nothing is salvageable. The seller wants to pull out. You have been here before. What's the first move that you take?
Sure. So it's really, again, coming back to the numbers. It's understanding the numbers, understanding what the buyer's business plan was when they kind of came into the building, and understanding kind of where we maybe have gotten off track. Right. So it's understanding the issues, understanding how we're going to resolve it from a number standpoint, how much is it going to cost to fix it, and try to understand and get to a resolution that everybody's comfortable with. But really, I would assume that the owner kind of knew what they were getting into with buying the building, with lobby issues, and I would hope have planned a capital or some kind of renovation to improve it.
So the third scenario is AI versus gut. So Newmark GPT tells you to drop a long time vendor in favor of a cheaper, higher rated alternative, but your gut says to stick to it. What would you do in that situation?
Yeah, so another great question. It really boils down to the fundamentals of real estate. It's a people business and it's a relationship driven business. And so early on in my career, one of my mentors said to me when I was bidding out contracts, he said, "Hey, would you send your kid to the cheapest daycare?" That kind of gave me pause for a second. And then he responds back, "Well, you would." He's like, "You might, but you also might not." Right? It's having the right vendors that are bringing the right value. And it's not always necessarily about the cost that drives the value. So a lot of times when we take things out to bid, if things are close and we've got a trusted vendor that we've had for 2, 3, 4, 10 years at a property, I'll go to them and say, "Hey, look, I'd really like to keep you here, but someone's a little bit more competitive on price. What can you do?" Sometimes they'll match somebody else's price. Sometimes they'll come down a little bit, and then we'll go make a recommendation to our client. Most of our contracts, typically the way they read with our clients, are we have to take the low bid, and if not, we need client approval. So it's really just making the case to your client as to why the vendor that you want to pick is the most important. So it comes back to that triangle of relationships and being in the middle of it and trying to get the best value, not necessarily the best cost all the time, the best value from your vendors.
Scenario is junior manager under you accidentally approves a $25,000 unnecessary expense. They come to you panicked. How will you handle that situation?
Well, again, I'll come back to it, right? The first and most important thing to do is to stay calm, right? Because if you're emotional and erratic, you're not going to make wise decisions. Thankfully, Newmark has some tiers in place and some controls in place, so something like that would never really happen with us. But if it did, it's, stay calm, reach out to the accounting team if something gets approved all the way up the chain, because certain people have certain limits based on their roles and their abilities. Work with the accounting team, reach out to them, put a stop payment on it. But thankfully, things like that don't ever really get that far because we've got the controls in place. And that's the best part about having a structure, such a great structure with a publicly traded team or a publicly traded company, excuse me, that's got such a great platform behind it.
Got it. Makes sense. Staying calm first is key, especially when there's a process in place to prevent all those mistakes from happening. It's good to hear Newmark has those safeguards built in. It sounds like they really help to keep the situations like that from turning into a bigger problem. So, my next question is the rooftop dog park. It's basically a tenant who wants a dog park on the rooftop. The legal team says maybe, the finance team says no, marketing says love that idea. Do you build a park space or back out?
So great question, right? And that, at the end of the day, again, it's a numbers business. It comes back to the NOI. Everything ties to the revenue. So I'd ask, hey, do I stand to lose this tenant over this? And in the bigger picture, will something like this, like a dog park, actually help attract more tenants to the building, thus making it more value, right? That's the real important thing. Does it add value? Yes or no? And understanding how it would potentially impact revenue. Finally, I would also go back to the owner and try to understand what their business plan is. Does it align with their goals? Does it align with their objectives? Is this something that's important to them, right? Maybe they're a pet lover, maybe they're not. But I think at the end of the day, if it's going to drive revenue and it's going to drive profits and it's going to make the building more money, it's certainly something that they will look into. Obviously, we involve legal as well, just to make sure that we're buttoned up so that you don't have any liabilities, somebody's pet getting bit or a person getting bit, but we'd work with the client to resolve all. At the end of the day, if it makes more money, it's probably a go.
Nice one. So then that brings me to my next question. The AI chatbot tenant takeover. So here's is your AI chatbot that has started giving tenants renovation advices that's legally questionable. So what would you do in that situation? Shut it down or spin it into a service?
Sure. So great questions. Most of our commercial leases don't allow tenants to renovate their space without client approval or without municipal approval if you need permits for things. Absolutely, we would shut it down. It's happened in the past before where we'll show up to a space and all of a sudden they're doing work over the weekend, taking out walls or, moving offices. And that's a big no-no. We tend to shut those down and alert our clients. And if really need to, we put our tenants in default and start a legal process. Thankfully, that doesn't happen too often. They understand kind of the rules of their lease, but from time to time, it does happen.
So you have covered everything about the situation so clearly and on the spot. So for a wrap up, have you ever dealt with something like this in real life? Maybe even a funny or unexpected incident that happened to you, Steve? Or have you ever faced a haunted situation or something like that?
Oh, thankfully, we've never faced a haunted situation. We've had plenty of stories, both good and bad, and some even a little bit sad. I mean, when we were managing self-storage, we had somebody who was living in one of the self-storage locker rooms and cleaning themselves up in one of the bathrooms. Obviously, we alerted the police and brought in some counseling for that individual. I think the residential building, when we took over, there was a tenant in there who had fake IDs. His first check bounced, his security deposit bounced. And then we realized he was using a fictitious name. So we reported it to the police. A couple days later, the police come to us and say, hey, we're raiding so-and-so's apartment. And we understand that he's been engaged in some alleged criminal activity by using fake IDs and stealing people's identities. And so long story short, that tenant was not there too much longer. But, again, no 2 days are the same. And just when you think you've seen it all, you've got, a tenant committing financial crimes and identity theft.
Wow, Steve, those are some wild stories. It definitely sounds like no 2 days are ever the same for you. So now let's wrap this up with a quick takeaways for our listeners. If someone looking to grow in commercial property management, what one piece of advice would you like to give them?
Yeah, so it's keep learning and keep your skills ready for when that opportunity presents itself. So you can be lucky, right? We talked about luck being preparation meeting opportunity. And so it's, go get your real estate license, go get a professional designation through BOMA or IREBA or IREM. And it's find a good mentor, see what they've done, see what their journey looks like, and try to follow in their footsteps to see what you can do to move your career forward.
So, Steve, looking ahead, where do you see yourself in next for your next challenge in next 5 years?
So great question. I mean, if we look back 5 years, we would have never thought that the entire country would be shut down for 18 to 24 months because of a global pandemic, right? So who knows what the future is going to bring. But from our standpoint, it's continue to grow the business, continue to grow our platform through AI or other innovations within the building. But my focus right now is the energy efficiency. So we've got a lot of great rebates through the utility programs, whether it's HVAC, whether it's lighting, whether it's solar. We're kind of in a unique situation right now where office still seems to be oversupplied and the demand hasn't come all the way back because of COVID yet. Not only are people not back to the office 5 days a week, companies are shrinking their offices. So, really the next 2 to 3 to 4 years are going to be critical to see how the market really positions itself, especially as it relates to office, how much of it's going to get knocked down, how much of it's going to get repurposed into, distribution centers or warehouses or apartment complexes. The real vision is going to be, to spot those opportunities before others see them. And again, coming back to numbers, really just find a way to making numbers work. And, for us, that really means evolving with our clients and the office landscape. We want to make sure that we continue to meet their needs, wherever they be.
That is such a thoughtful perspective, Steve. I like how you are connecting market shifts, technology, and client needs into one long term strategy. It really shows how future proofing isn't just about reacting but anticipating. And your point about having the vision to see opportunities where other might not is powerful in itself. That's definitely a skill set that separates good managers from the great ones. How can people connect with you or learn more about Newmark property management work if they want to?
Sure, absolutely. So we're a publicly traded company. We've got a website. I'm up there. I've got a page. I'm on LinkedIn. So certainly feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and ask how to learn more about the business. Happy to share my thoughts and feedback.
And Steve, are you using any social media platforms to do your business?
Primarily just LinkedIn.
Got it. That's perfect. Steve, thank you so much for taking us behind the scenes of what it really takes to manage millions of square feet and keeping operations lean, smart, and client focused. Your insight into this asset repositioning, NOI, and energy efficiency gave us a whole new appreciation for the engine room of real estate.
Thanks so much for having me, Anisha. It's been a pleasure.
So, to all our listeners, if you have ever walked into a well run commercial property and wondered who's keeping it all together, now you know. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us for more deep dive into this world of real estate professionals. And don't forget to subscribe and share our channel. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep talking about real estate. Thank you so much.